Alright, Revit 2027 just dropped. And if you're anything like me, you're not asking what's new. You're asking, is this going to make my life easier or just break everything that currently works? Because let's be honest, upgrading Revit isn't just clicking install. It means upgrading projects, testing plugins, retraining teams, and dealing with whatever Autodesk decided to improve this year. So in this video, I'm going to walk through the key features in Revit 2027 in a very practical way. Not marketing, not hype, just what it's good for, where it falls apart, and whether it's actually worth upgrading for. Let's get into it. This video is sponsored by Taggetize, the easiest way to run tag all on multiple Revit views and sheets. Also, say goodbye to overlapping tags. Taggetize will turn this into this. Try Taggetize completely for free using the link in this video's description. Let's start with the big one, Autodesk Assistant. This is Autodesk's push into AI inside Revit. You've got a built-in assistant that helps you find tools, answer questions, and guide workflows. Now on paper, this is great. If you're onboarding new team members, or if you're jumping between features you don't use often, this can save time. Instead of digging through menus or Googling, you just ask. And for basic troubleshooting, missing elements, warnings, tool locations, it's genuinely useful. But here's the reality on the live project. For example, I asked it here to tag this view in a way that minimizes overlaps or clashes between tags. Here's its response. Looking at the output, we can see it tags way more elements than necessary. Some elements that produced empty tags were included. Also, most of the tags have no leader and sit directly on top of their hosts, even though that would obscure the host elements significantly. This happened even though I explicitly asked it in my prompt to produce stars with leader lines. Checking this further, we can see many tags collide with one another or overlap Revit elements in the background. The AI apparently failed to meet my requirement in the prompt to keep tags clearly visible with minimal overlaps. Looking at the AI's response in the chat window, I can see it at least followed some logical steps. It first collected elements of the categories I requested. Then, it generated tags for one category at a time. Finally, it reported the number of tags created for each category. So what's missing is just the rearrange step to clear tag collisions. And here's the AI's explanation. Apparently, it can only run the commands already available in Revit, like the tag all command in this case. It lacks actual spatial awareness and intelligence for anything more than that. For a clean tag layout, you still need to use a plugin like Taggetize. With Taggetize, it's never been easier to tag multiple Revit categories at once using your favorite tagging styles. Say goodbye to spending countless hours untangling Revit tags. After running Taggetize on this view, for example, all my tags are perfectly readable. None of them overlaps with their hosts or other elements in the view. If I think this tag, for example, can be placed better, I can just select it and click Next to tell Taggetize to try the next possible tag position. Each time I click the button, Taggetize moves the tag for me, and I can keep doing this until it gets to a tag position I like. There we go. That's much better. Try Taggetize completely for free today using the link in this video's description. So, Autodesk Assistant is great for navigation and support, but it's not replacing real design experience anytime soon. Only upgrade to Revit 2027 if you value faster onboarding and quick in-app help, not if you're expecting AI to transform delivery. With that out of the way, Revit 2027 still has many useful new features that may convince you to upgrade. However, let's assess these properly so we can make an informed decision. One great feature is hosting a wall on another wall. This is actually an enhancement to a feature already available in Revit 26. If you still remember, when we go and activate the wall tool, we can choose to create walls along the boundaries of a room. This works fine in Revit 26, but the disadvantage is that if you then move the main boundary wall of the room, the wall you added later along that boundary will not update. In Revit 27, when we do the same wall by room command, there's a new option called hosted wall. Let me enable this option and then create the walls along this room boundary again. Now, when I try to move one of the main boundary walls of this room, Revit 27 is clever enough to move the finish wall along with it. This is useful for finishes, linings, layered constructions, allowing more flexibility in modeling relationships. The only caveat is that, because this will set up additional constraints in the model, bigger projects may run a bit slower in Revit if this is used a lot. However, it's better to have this option, so if you do finish walls a lot, you can save quite some time. So yes, this is a good reason to upgrade to Revit 27. Next, Tag Leader enhancements. Revit 27 focuses on making it easier to modify the start and end points of a leader line. For the leader endpoint, we have always had the option to make it either a free end or an attached one. In this new version, Revit added a new clip icon next to the leader endpoint so you can make it either a free or an attached end even faster. However, Revit 27 also allows the leader start point to be free or attached. Although this provides greater flexibility, as a BIM manager, this option actually makes me nervous. This is because now anyone can change the start point of any leader to essentially detach the leader from the tag. Now, you may think of a situation where this is useful. However, on a big project, if all the team members can do this to individual tags, there's a good chance that someone will have to do a lot of cleanup at the end of the day, especially if the Revit standards on the project are not strictly enforced. So for me, this new feature is definitely not on the list of reasons that make me want to upgrade Revit to version 27. Also related to tagging, Revit 27 announced full support for multi-category tag in the tag all command. This means when you run the tag all command, you can select any multi-category tag families to tag any of the categories you selected. Although this is a good enhancement, I just can't understand why Revit 27 still hasn't fixed the issue of selected tag families not being remembered in the tag all dialog box. As you can see on my first run, I selected the multi-category tag to assign to those doors. However, on my second run, the window still shows up with the previous default tag family selected. Now I have to reselect the tag family I want. Doing this over and over again really wastes a lot of time. To persist my tagging settings, I will still need to use a plugin like Taggetize. For each category being tagged, the plugin also allows specifying any existing Revit filters in the model. This means I can limit the process to tag only elements passing some certain conditions. Let's hope Revit can incorporate something similar into the tag all command in the future. Overall, if using multi-category tags is crucial to your workflow, definitely upgrade to Revit 27. If you want your tag all options to persist, however, consider using Taggetize or a similar tagging plugin for now. Alright, so far I have been very critical of Revit 27. The next enhancement, however, is one of the best things ever added to the Revit ecosystem, and that is accelerated graphics, which is now officially out of tech preview. And yes, you should notice much smoother performance and view navigation when accelerated graphics is enabled. Orbiting, panning, navigating large models, it all feels much more responsive, especially on decent hardware. Just keep in mind that in order to achieve this speed boost, Revit will simplify certain elements in your view, so what you see will be different from what eventually will be printed from the same view. But let's not oversell this. This is an optimization, not a magic fix. So, upgrade to Revit 27 for incremental performance gains, but make sure you maintain good model management practices. Now this one, controlling line weights in linked models, is actually quite controversial. In Revit 27, you can now specify whether linked models use the line weight table from the host model or from the link. This is supposed to improve visual consistency because the host and linked models may use different line weight definitions for the same object styles. Which is great because, let's be honest, linked models are rarely clean. Different consultants, different standards, different line weight setups, and somehow it all ends up in your drawing. This gives you more control to fix that visually. But, and this is important, this is still a downstream fix. You're not solving the root problem, you're just masking it. And on large projects with frequent updates, these overrides can become another thing you need to manage and QA. So, similar to the new ability to set custom start points of tag leaders, the BIM manager in me says this new line weights option may do more harm than good. It's more sustainable to align the line weights across models. Therefore, upgrade to Revit 27 to access the quick line weight fix if you really need it, but still try to encourage everyone to use the same line weight tables for all models in your coordination workflow. Now this is an interesting one, rule-based numbering. In Revit 27, you can define rules to automatically assign numbers to elements like doors, rooms, etc. For well-structured projects, this can save time and reduce manual errors, especially early in the design process. As you can see, I'm using an existing filter to select all doors for numbering. Next, under partitioning, I can choose the parameters to group the doors by, which will effectively decide how the number sequence moves through them. For example, let's use these two parameters for now. Next, under numbering formatting, I can select the number of digits in each door number. I can also combine the number with values from added or parameters. Of course, since I have multiple parameters now, there's also an option to specify the separator character between those fields. With all that set up, I can now click on the number sequence button to preview what will be written to my door parameter. If I click on OK now and then check the door parameters of a few instances, we can see they have all received the correct values. Also, numbering is rarely static. Design changes, layouts shift, client requirements evolve, and suddenly your element numbers need updating. This is where the new feature is valuable because once set up, your rules will update element numbers live as long as you keep them enabled. This means less overriding, adjusting, or abandoning the system. However, I can't help thinking that there's a missed opportunity here. Although useful, the numbering rows available doesn't seem to have any directional awareness. A typical requirement on many projects is to number elements along a certain direction or path. For example, here I want the door numbers to be incremented based on the position of each door along this curved path. Hopefully, Autodesk will add this very important role to the numbering system in the near future. Anyway, if you value semi-automated numbering for stable workflows, definitely upgrade to Revit 27. Just keep in mind, you may need to step in if a more specific numbering rule is required. So overall, Revit 2027 isn't a groundbreaking release, but it's definitely a meaningful one. You've got solid improvements in performance with accelerated graphics, better modeling flexibility with features like hosted walls, and some useful, although sometimes questionable, enhancements to tagging and documentation. On top of that, the move to .NET 10 is a big step forward under the hood. It doesn't change your day-to-day immediately, but it sets the foundation for better performance, more modern plugins, and future development. So you should upgrade to Revit 2027 if you value incremental improvements, better performance, and long-term platform stability. But if your current setup is stable and heavily reliant on plugins, it might be worth waiting just a bit longer. Because, as always, the best version of Revit usually needs to have received 1 or 2 patches after release. Before you go, check out our sponsor, Taggetize. Save all your tagging styles in one place and tag one or several views or sheets at once. Also, say goodbye to overlapping tags. Simply review generated tags and make any final tweaks with the handy tag audit commands. Try Taggetize completely for free using the link in this video's description.
If you like this lesson and want more like this every single week, make sure to subscribe to this channel now. For now, have a good day and I'll see you in the next tutorial.